If you're over 50 and want science-backed information to protect your health, subscribe to this channel right now. New videos every week. What if the fatigue you feel every afternoon, the bloating that never fully goes away, the brain fog that comes and goes, and that dull discomfort on the right side of your abdomen are not separate, unrelated problems? What if they are all coming from the same place? One organ, silently overwhelmed, and almost never the first thing anyone thinks to check. Here is what most people over 50 are never told. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, is now the most common liver condition in the world. It affects an estimated 1 in 4 adults globally, and after 50, the risk rises sharply because of hormonal changes, slower metabolism, visceral fat accumulation, and decades of dietary patterns that the liver has been quietly absorbing. The most dangerous part is not the disease itself, it is the silence. Fatty liver produces no pain in its early stages. It does not show up on standard blood panels until damage is already significant, and every single sign it does produce looks like something else entirely. Hey, I'm Dr. Carter, and today I am going to show you 8 of those signs. The ones your body has been sending that most people dismiss, misread, or attribute to stress, age, or a bad night's sleep. And sign number 3 is the one that shocks people most because it appears in a place nobody ever connects to the liver. Stay until the end, because in the final section I will show you 3 specific foods and 1 daily habit that research links directly to reducing liver fat in adults over 50, and one of them you probably already have in your kitchen. Let's get into it. Before we get to the signs, I need to clear up the biggest misconception about fatty liver disease, because it stops most people from ever suspecting they have it. Most people believe fatty liver is an alcohol problem. It is not, at least not for most people who have it. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease develops in people who drink little or no alcohol. It is driven by excess caloric intake, particularly from refined carbohydrates and fructose, by insulin resistance, by visceral fat accumulation, and by a sedentary lifestyle, all of which becomes significantly more prevalent after 50. Here is how it works. The liver is the body's primary fat processing organ. When it receives more fat and sugar than it can metabolize, which happens gradually over years, it begins storing the excess as fat droplets within its own cells. In the early stage, called simple steatosis, the liver is enlarged and fatty but still functional. In the more advanced stage, called NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, inflammation develops alongside the fat accumulation and liver cells begin to sustain damage. Left unaddressed, NASH can progress to fibrosis, then cirrhosis, and, in a smaller percentage of cases, to liver cancer. Here is what makes this particularly relevant for adults over 50. Standard liver enzymes, the ALT and AST values on a routine blood panel, can remain within normal range even in the presence of significant fat accumulation. This is why most people with fatty liver have no idea they have it. The tests that would catch it early, liver ultrasound, FibroScan, or the more advanced FIB4 index, are simply not part of routine screening, which means the signs the body produces are often the only early warning available. Here is what they look like. Sign number 1. Persistent fatigue, especially in the afternoon. Not tiredness after a demanding day. The specific kind of fatigue that arrives in the early afternoon, often after lunch, and does not respond to rest, caffeine, or sleep. The liver performs over 500 metabolic functions. When it is compromised by fat accumulation, its efficiency drops across all of them, including the regulation of blood glucose, the processing of metabolic waste products, and the production of proteins that support cellular energy. The result is a systemic, low-grade energy deficit that is felt most acutely in the hours when the liver's metabolic workload peaks after the midday meal. This afternoon fatigue pattern is one of the most consistent early complaints in adults later diagnosed with fatty liver disease, and it is almost universally attributed to age, poor sleep, or stress, because nothing in a standard blood test flags it as hepatic in origin. If this pattern describes your afternoons regularly and nothing else explains it, it deserves to be part of your next medical conversation. The next sign is one most people have experienced but almost never take seriously. Sign number 2. Bloating and abdominal discomfort that comes and goes. Not a food intolerance, not irritable bowel. The kind of bloating that seems to have no consistent dietary trigger, that appears and disappears without a clear pattern, often accompanied by a sense of fullness or heaviness in the upper right abdomen. The liver sits in the upper right quadrant of the abdomen beneath the rib cage. When it accumulates fat, it enlarges, a condition called hepatomegaly. This enlargement creates a sensation of pressure, fullness, or dull discomfort in that area that is easy to mistake for digestive issues. Additionally, a compromised liver produces less bile, the substance required to properly digest dietary fats. When bile production is insufficient, fat digestion becomes incomplete, producing exactly that bloating, gas, and digestive heaviness that most people spend years managing with probiotics and dietary changes without ever addressing the underlying cause. If your digestive discomfort consistently localizes to the upper right side, or if it worsens after fatty or heavy meals, that pattern is clinically relevant. Now for the sign that surprises people the most. Sign number 3, brain fog. Difficulty concentrating, slow thinking, poor memory. This is the sign most people never connect to the liver, and it is the one that tends to produce the strongest reaction when people hear the explanation. The liver is responsible for filtering ammonia and other neurotoxic metabolic byproducts from the bloodstream. When liver function is impaired, even mildly as in early fatty liver, this filtering process becomes less efficient. Small amounts of neurotoxic compounds that would normally be cleared begin to reach the brain. The result is a specific cognitive pattern, difficulty concentrating on tasks that used to be effortless, a sense that thinking is slower than it should be, words that don't come as quickly, and a general mental cloudiness that is worst in the afternoons and after meals. Researchers call this subclinical hepatic encephalopathy, and studies show it is present in a measurable percentage of patients with fatty liver disease who have no obvious neurological symptoms. Most of these patients are told their cognitive changes are age-related. Some of them are, but some are not. If your mental sharpness has declined in a way that feels disproportionate to your age, and it appears alongside other signs on this list, the liver connection deserves serious consideration. Sign number 4, unexplained weight gain, especially around the abdomen. This one creates a circular relationship that most people never fully understand. Visceral fat, the fat that accumulates around the abdominal organs, is directly hepatotoxic. It releases inflammatory cytokines and free fatty acids that travel through the portal vein directly to the liver, driving fat accumulation in the hepatic tissue. The more visceral fat a person carries, the greater the liver's fat load. And conversely, as the liver's metabolic efficiency drops, insulin resistance increases, which promotes further fat storage around the abdomen. This bidirectional relationship means that belly fat and fatty liver feed each other in a self-reinforcing cycle. Breaking it requires addressing both simultaneously, which is why approaches that target only weight loss without supporting liver function tend to produce incomplete results. If your abdominal circumference has been expanding despite no significant change in diet or activity, and particularly if this change accelerated after 50, the liver connection is worth investigating. Sign number 5. Elevated triglycerides on blood tests. This is one of the few signs that actually does appear on a standard blood panel, but it is rarely explained in the context of liver health. The liver is the primary site of triglyceride synthesis and export. When it is overwhelmed with fat, it exports more triglycerides into the bloodstream, which is why elevated triglycerides are one of the most consistent laboratory findings in fatty liver disease, often appearing years before liver enzymes become abnormal. A triglyceride level above 150 milligrams per deciliter, particularly when combined with low HDL cholesterol and a large waist circumference, forms what is called metabolic syndrome, which is present in the majority of adults with NAFLD. If your most recent blood work showed elevated triglycerides and your doctor focused primarily on statin therapy without discussing liver health, that conversation is worth reopening. Sign number 6. Itchy skin without a rash. This one seems completely unrelated to the liver, but it is one of the more specific signs of hepatic dysfunction, and one of the most consistently dismissed. The liver produces and processes bile salts. When bile flow is reduced or impaired, as happens with fat accumulation and early liver dysfunction, bile salts can accumulate in the bloodstream and deposit in the skin. The result is a specific type of itching called cholestatic pruritus, generalized without a visible rash, often worse at night or after a warm shower. Most adults who experience this are told they have dry skin, a dermatological condition, or an allergic reaction. The liver is rarely considered without significant jaundice, which only appears at far more advanced stages. If you have been experiencing unexplained itching that does not respond to moisturizers or antihistamines, and it appears alongside other signs on this list, this is one worth flagging specifically to your doctor. Sign number 7. Dark urine or unusually pale stools. These two signs together constitute one of the more direct indicators of impaired bile flow, and they can appear earlier than most people expect. Bile is responsible for the brown color of normal stool. When bile production or flow is reduced, stools become lighter, pale brown, beige, or in more significant cases, clay-colored. Simultaneously, bilirubin that would normally be excreted through bile is instead processed by the kidneys, producing urine that is darker than usual, amber, orange-tinged, or noticeably more concentrated, even with adequate hydration. Neither of these changes needs to be dramatic to be significant. A subtle but consistent shift in stool color noticed over several weeks, and urine that seems darker than it used to be without a clear hydration explanation are both worth documenting and discussing with a physician. Sign number 8. Visible changes on the skin, spider angiomas or yellowing. These are the signs that most people associate with liver disease. But what most people don't know is that they can appear in much milder forms than the dramatic jaundice seen in advanced conditions. Spider angiomas are small spider-shaped collections of dilated blood vessels visible just beneath the skin surface, typically appearing on the chest, face, or arms. They are caused by elevated estrogen levels that result when the liver, which normally metabolizes hormones, is functioning below capacity. A subtle yellowing of the whites of the eyes, not the dramatic jaundice of liver failure, but a faint yellowish tinge, can also appear in earlier stages as bilirubin begins to accumulate. Neither of these signs is cause for immediate alarm, but both are direct reflections of hepatic function, and both deserve immediate medical evaluation if present alongside any of the other signs on this list. If you recognize 3 or more of these signs today, what comes next is the most important part of this video. Now for the part I promised: 3 foods and 1 daily habit with consistent research support for reducing liver fat in adults over 50. First, coffee, 2 to 3 cups daily without added sugar. This is the one that surprises people most, and the research behind it is among the most robust in hepatology. Multiple large studies show that regular coffee consumption is associated with significantly lower rates of liver fibrosis, reduced liver enzyme levels, and slower progression of fatty liver disease. The mechanism involves compounds in coffee, particularly chlorogenic acids and kale, that have direct anti-inflammatory and anti-fibrotic effects on hepatic tissue. 2 to 3 cups per day of regular brewed coffee, not heavily sweetened specialty drinks, produces the most consistent benefit in the research. If you already drink coffee, this may be the easiest evidence-based habit you are already partially doing. Second, olive oil, extra virgin, raw, 1 to 2 tablespoons daily. Research published in the journal Nutrition and Metabolism shows that daily consumption of extra virgin olive oil reduces liver fat content, improves liver enzyme levels, and reduces insulin resistance in adults with NAFLD. The mechanism is oleic acid and oleocanthal, compounds that reduce hepatic inflammation and support the liver's fat processing efficiency. The key detail, as always, is raw. Heat degrades these compounds significantly. 1 to 2 tablespoons drizzled over food after cooking every day. Third, cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, at least 3 times per week. Research from the University of Illinois shows that sulforaphane, the active compound in cruciferous vegetables, directly inhibits the accumulation of fat in liver cells and reduces markers of hepatic inflammation. In animal models, regular cruciferous vegetable consumption prevented the development of fatty liver even on a high-fat diet. Human studies confirm the association between higher cruciferous vegetable intake and lower rates of NAFLD. 3 or more servings per week, lightly cooked to preserve sulforaphane content. The daily habit, a 20-minute walk after your largest meal. Research published in the Journal of Hepatology shows that post-meal walking, specifically in the 20 to 30 minutes after eating, significantly reduces the postprandial glucose and triglyceride spike that drives fat accumulation in the liver. It does not need to be intense. A comfortable pace, consistent daily practice, and the timing after the main meal are what produce the effect. Important note: if you have been diagnosed with liver disease at any stage, or if your liver enzymes are elevated, do not manage this condition on your own. Work directly with a hepatologist or gastroenterologist. These strategies support liver health. They do not replace medical treatment for established disease. Today you saw the 8 silent signs that fatty liver disease produces after 50, from afternoon fatigue and persistent bloating to the brain fog in sign number 3 that most people spend years attributing to age, and the skin changes in signs 6, 7, and 8 that almost no one connects to the liver. And you saw 3 specific foods and 1 daily habit that research consistently links to reducing liver fat, starting with something most people already have in their kitchen every morning. The liver is one of the most resilient organs in the human body. It has a remarkable capacity for regeneration and recovery, but only if the signals are caught early enough and the right steps are taken. Catching them early does not just protect your liver, it protects your brain, your metabolism, your energy, and your long-term independence. If this video was useful to you, please hit the like button. It helps this channel grow and reach more people who need this information. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next videos. And share this with someone over 50 you care about, someone who has been dismissing fatigue, bloating, or brain fog as inevitable. This might be exactly what changes how they look at it. Let me know in the comments, which of these 8 signs have you recognized? And were you surprised by sign number 3, the brain fog connection? I read every comment. See you in the next video.